Hello. Go for it. I am the engineering manager in Jetpack Compose. And Sebastiano kindly asked me to come and talk about our plans.
Fantastic. Welcome. No audio from Seb. Audio from Seb. Hello everybody. Let's do the. Can you hear me? Well,
okay. Now they can hear me too. Hey. So let me do the introduction again. Hello again, and welcome back again to Code with Italians. The stream where Windows decides to change the input controls without telling you. Today we have Clara. You've heard who Clara is already. Bye, Ivan. Up to you.
Yes. So let's do the usual. Let's do the usual Ivan thing as well. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us and supporting us. We have a new Everything Pizza supporter on Coffee, and we want to say thank you to. I need to get the name correctly, so bear with me for a second.
Tudor Luca.
Tudor Luca. That's actually very nice because also my baby is called Luca, so it's a nice coincidence. So thank you, Luca, for support. Or Tudor, who knows? I mean, I'm assuming that Luca is the name. Anyway,
I will not be assuming.
Yeah, we don't assume here. On the giveaway side, we are gonna run the usual sticker giveaway. So you can get these fancy stickers here in the chat. Just follow the stream. I'm gonna drop the keyword along the episode. And if you win the giveaway, and if you are a subscriber or a supporter of any kind, you get also the holo stickers that you cannot buy on the store. What you can buy on the store are other stickers, like the Code with Italian sticker or the Italian hand sticker. And so the pinched fingers has the emoji says sticker. So you can buy them on our coffee shop. It's a nice. And today we are also running the giveaway for the IntelliJ license. Our previous episodes with Alex, if you check, I'm going to drop the link in the chat in a moment. If you check the episode and you comment with the indie keyword, you can join the giveaway, and we are going to just raffle our 150 euro worth license for IntelliJ Ultimate Edition. You can use it to do Compose for desktop, for web. In the near future, you can also use it for Android. So thank you for the support. Stick with us. Anything else, Sebastiano?
No, I think we need to talk about my favorite topic in the world, Compose.
Yay!
Yes!
You mean this is not always about Compose?
It mostly is. But that's why I'm always excited to get talking. It's like, talking about Compose. I like Compose. I want to do Compose. Yes. I mean, historically speaking, Compose was born as like a UI framework for phones and tablets, right? That's historically been the root.
They even say for phones, right? Like 1.0 was very much about phones.
Right.
The tablet progression is kind of happening now.
Yeah, that's why we have you. I'm not telling this stuff myself. But there's more. Like, we have used Compose indirectly, well, not Compose UI, but the Compose runtime to create widgets with Glance. And I know that you can use Compose on non-phone devices as well, but I don't know much about that. So that's what I want to ask you about. Like, what's the current state of things in terms of non-phone support?
Good question. So yeah, I think in the lead up to 1.0, the big focus was phone, right? And that's what we delivered. There's still a lot of work to do there. Like, don't get me wrong, we're not done. But that kind of was the biggest focus we did until last year. And then after that, I think the first step is kind of large screens, but that's also considered main Compose. We've also been working, so there's Wear Compose, where you can write Wear apps using Compose, the actual apps running. In parallel to that, we have Glance, which I think you've had an episode on before.
Yeah.
The idea with Glance is providing that kind of Compose surface on top of what traditionally was remote views to do widgets, but also Wear tiles, which are the glanceable panels that appear in Wear that are not the actual app running, but it's more like the notification style. That's why they're called tiles. And the idea was, can we provide a surface that creates all these, and the main language being Compose? And then obviously, I think you're aware of like desktop, web, all of that is happening as well. And I think we're at the beginning of something really exciting. There's a lot of things happening at the moment, but those are the current ongoing things that I'm aware of from our perspective. I'm sure there's a lot more.
Cool. When you're talking about the tiles on Wear, I haven't done Wear in a while, and I haven't used Wear in a while, I have to admit. Are you talking about the complications in the watch face, or is that a separate thing?
That's a separate thing. Complications is when you have a watch face with like the hours, minutes, hands. Complications are the little circles that you can fill in. If you think of a traditional watch, like the little pieces that you can fill in information with, like just the weather, that's a complication. Those are still, so there's a migration happening for Wear where they're moving all of the libraries to Android X. And you may have seen some of that. That's not Compose though. That's simply moving from where they were originally developed into main Android X libraries. But those we're not targeting right now with Compose. Out of complications are very canvas heavy. Like it's something that needs to be rendered every second. And so they have kind of a very optimized path where they don't use views. It is purely a canvas you're drawing into. And so we're not sure that's the right use case to be trying to cover right now. What we do with tiles is when you have the main screen on Wear and you swipe to the side, on one side you have notifications, on the other side you have tiles. And they're these kind of like quick glance, like the weather screen. They're kind of very quick glanceable, and that's why we called it glance, pieces of information that are published by the app. And that's why it's very similar to widgets. It's the app publishing some information without the app running.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of tablet support though, there was new stuff in 1.1, and I guess foldables kind of like, are they phones, are they tablets, are they both? I don't know what's the official designation there.
I think so yes, that is kind of the biggest focus right now, where we're trying, especially the core Compose team is trying to push, is large screens. We call it large screens because that's the thing. Is it a tablet? Is it a foldable? Is it desktop? So there's like Chrome OS running apps in very, very large scenarios. All of the efforts we're doing right now that you'll see a lot of kind of progress in 1.1 and the next release we'll do after that kind of relate to this. And it's about getting, for example, hardware input really working, because a lot of these devices will have a keyboard or a mouse or a trackpad attached to them. There's a big stream that is still ongoing around layouts, and I can talk about layouts and large screens for hours if you want.
Please do.
That's kind of, it's a big focus. If you think of it, again, like we focused on the phone, and I think most app developers start there as well nowadays, right? Like you get a design, you design just a small screen, and then we're having trouble getting apps doing beautiful experiences on a tablet. One, because yes, Android hasn't paid attention to tablets for ages, but also like developers are not in that space, and it almost feels like you need to write a separate app. How do you even fill that screen? We've heard a lot like, well, what do I even do? So we're doing a lot of things that are targeting kind of that space. How do we help you lay out things in the screen, especially using Compose, but also in views? Like we're targeting kind of both, of how do we help you fill up that screen? And you'll see a lot of the work that is going on in Compose relates to this. Like we've done window size classes, which is just a way of classifying different sizes of screens and helping you decide when to do one thing or another. We're doing a bunch of kind of big layout improvements. And this is a very exciting space. I think we have a lot to learn from the web. Like the web has always filled in the screen, but they did the opposite, right? Like the web moved to mobile web and they had to go from a lot of content down to a small screen. We have the opposite problem. We're trying to figure out how do we help developers put that small content into a bigger screen. Exciting stuff, though. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Ivan will be very excited to see what comes up with Compose for large screens. Because Ivan, do you want to talk about your app?
No, not really, because it's ugly as shit. But
it's not going to be ugly.
So,
it's not going to be ugly.
designed it, right? I heard rumors.
Yeah. Well, wow. News are spreading. I mean,
Google knows, Ivan. Google knows.
Yeah, Google knows everything, man. That was creepy. That was fucking creepy. Anyway, jokes aside, yes, but I'm very, very grateful and very, very lucky because we are in this circus, and Chris is part of the whole mayhem here. So I'm gonna get probably some idea for the redesign, but it's not for everybody, right? I mean, I have been like alone on my pet projects for so long, and the UI part is always the part that I kind of not do. I don't do it because I'm not able to do any fancy. I don't do animations because I don't have time for that. And most
you're
of the time I
Doris
just build.
Cry right now. You know that, right?
No, but actually, if you remember the episode with Doris, this is giving me a huge opportunity because I can do a lot of micro animations like with one line, right? So for me now, before I was just checking the thing, gone, visible, and it was just, and now I'm animating visibility, right? Because I'm a fan. I'm like the cool kids, right? I'm doing the animating visibility. I don't know if I have, so that it's very easy for me to add, this kind of micro animations for basically free. But the design part, the UI part, it's not that easy, right? I mean, I have a list. What's gonna be on the tablet? I don't know. A grid. That's the extent of my design experience. How about 4 columns, right? So if you have something for me, it's gonna be useful.
So to be fair, that's exactly what we're doing, right? Like, as much as you can get Chris to come on this episode and help you with your app, not everyone has a Chris. To be fair, I can't do it without him either. I'm terrible at design. But that's, I think, where we know there's a big gap that we're trying to fill. We worked with Material. There's a bunch of kind of adaptive guidance that came out around the ADS timeframe within the Material design site. And to me, Material is very key for that kind of developer. Like, you don't know what to do with your app. Material provides some pretty nice kind of out-of-the-box things that look pretty, right? Without you knowing very much what you're doing. It sometimes doesn't target that well the super high-end apps that have a very big UX team that want to do their thing. I think it's great for your kind of developer, right? Where just tell me what to do. And so Material Design put out a bunch of guidance, and we're going to continue working on that this year. This is a really old Material site you ended in.
Yeah, the others aren't seeing it, but I'm just going to look. I'm going to share the screen so everyone can see that. Because I'm just Googling because I don't know which one exactly it is.
Search for Material large screen.
This is the Material 2.
This is Material 1 even.
Even? Okay, so how did I get there?
The first result is a good one. There's a big blog post that went out, that went around the ADS timeframe, and it points to all of the different things. Liam being a key person here that you want to look for. But they've been really trying to help with how do you fill that screen. And there's some work that started appearing in this, and we will see more coming. We have this project called Canonical Layouts. The idea being, like, we looked at all the tablets apps out there and said, okay, are there patterns of ways they're filling the screen that we could then just give you options, right? And we came up with, there's a set of 5, which there's the clear like list detail layout. It's obvious, right? Like the Gmail style list of things, open thing next to it. There's things like news feeds tend to have a grid of things that fall, some a bit bigger, some a bit smaller, more in like a grid. There's things that are, if you think of like a social media feed tends to have like a sidebar of other things. So building those constructs, there's already a views implementation of these in the Material catalog, which is cool to look at. They purely use constraint layout to pull off all of the designs from the designers So that's kind of really cool to see. You can do it pretty easily with the existing stuff reviews. We're working on the Compose side. We want to give like the very optimal code that we want to we know the moment we put code out there, people are going to copy paste and run with it. So we're being very cautious of like, are we happy with what we've written? Do we need to do more work to make things a bit simpler before we put that code out there and it just runs on its own? But the idea being like, yeah, if we can give you 5 traditional layouts that work for most apps, you should help the 90% developer say, okay, let me just take one of these structures and I already have content. Let me put it in these ways and see how I can fill the screen.
Yeah,
this is invaluable.
Nice.
It's invaluable for somebody like me, because I mean I always joke about most 99% of the mobile apps are like a list showing a JSON rendered in some way. So
that's true. It's not a joke.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, people get very sensitive because that. Yes, but that's
but I have a fancy database solution that scales to 1,000 clients a second. It's one app on the phone. I mean,
for somebody like me building pet projects in my spare time, it's incredibly valuable to have like some legit guidelines. We had Manuel the other week for the architecture episode, and that was good. I have been doing things differently from the guidelines, but then we had a conversation. It was like, okay, that makes sense. So from now on, I don't even bother. I'm just gonna go with the guidelines. No matter what. I mean, they thought about it. So yeah, sure, it's different from what I'm used to. But again, there is documentation. If somebody tells me, oh, Ivan, why are you doing this? I was like, yeah, I'm following the guidelines. I mean, and if I could do that also for, as you say, with code snippets for the UI, like copy pasting the shit out of material.io, that would be useful, because we already do a bit of that with with the example apps on GitHub, for instance. Jet news and jet something, jet tab, and then you pick the app that you want. But again, it would be nice to have like documentation. And so thanks.
I think those are the playground. We did some of this. We implemented list detail layouts in Jet News for ADS, and we started doing kind of foldable postures in Jetcaster. I think now we're working towards but those are very dug into a sample. How do we actually show you the piece of code that is specific to this that will help? We'll get there. Again, I know it's so progress. Sometimes we take some time to put things out, but there's a lot of thought that goes into everything we put out. We're being very, very cautious to make sure we're encouraging the right stuff. It's dangerous sometimes.
Yeah. Great power, great responsibility, something, I guess.
Correct. Yes.
And I mean, there's going to be, like, even if you do everything perfectly, there's going to be someone out there who's going to be like, oh, I don't like that. But
which is fine.
That's for sure.
To be fair, with these layouts, I expect that to happen even more than usual, right? Like, it's more of inspiration. Like, here's a code snippet that does this. We've had a lot of discussion in the team, like, should these be actual layouts that we provide and we always come back to, we'll never cover everyone's use case. Like, we can write a row component and try and cover every possible use case of putting things in a row, but we can't cover every possible use case of a list detail layout. So it's best to give you something we think is right to go from and let you run from there.
And I think there is also the strength of Compose, in the sense that you can like freeze the elemental elements, like the atomic elements of a design, but then the way you put them together, you can just copy paste, because that's not much work to it once you know what you're doing, right? And then everyone can change and customize and do what they want.
Something we did that were very, very purposeful was, can developers go a level deeper whenever they have something we haven't done, right? Like, say our switches don't do exactly the thing that you wanted. Can you open switch and actually copy that and go from there? And that's kind of what we're trying to do here as well. But we want to make sure that when you open that list detail layout, the thing that you copy makes sense, in that we've provided you the right building blocks and not 200 lines of code that you don't understand, right? And a lot of thought goes into packaging layer by layer everything we do to try and help with, in Compose, you can just open a component, look at how it's implemented and run with it.
I mean, technically,
we do that
you could
constantly.
do that. Yeah, we do that all the time, and it's invaluable, especially when you're trying to understand how to implement something yourself. And you're like, oh, that's somewhat similar to what Checkbox would do, so let me check how that works. But I think like the important part about that is you could do that with views, theoretically, but you always got lost somewhere.
Well, because also views, the view was the unit, right? Like if you need to customize anything, you need to suddenly create a custom view and copy all of it. With Compose, it's layered, so you just have to unwrap one layer of the onion and then go with that.
Yeah, my experience with that was trying to create a theme for Compose on desktop. And I was like, okay, I need to create a text view, a text box. And I was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be a pain. This is going to take forever to do. And I was okay, so how does the material one work? And I command clicked in, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's a composable that seems to do most of the work, and then it just needs to change the appearance. That works for me. And it took like an hour. That was great. So,
and to be fair, that's one that evolved a lot in the last 6 months, I think, because we weren't super happy with the unboxing of it for a while. And then there was a huge refactor of trying to take like the decoration of it out. So yeah, we're constantly trying to make it better. There's endless arguments in the team of where we could improve each one. We'll get there.
Yeah, I can imagine that. It's never done in a sense. And
we do go a lot by feedback. So if you're chatting to us on the Kotlin Lang Slack, on Twitter, you're filing bugs saying, I tried to do this and I couldn't figure out how. That's why we end up doing things, right? Like the refactor of text fields is because we had several bugs of people telling us, I need to do this and I can't. There was a bunch of bugs around just like the padding, like, oh, you're adding too much padding. I don't know how to remove it. That triggers us to go fix it.
Yeah. And nice. You can also write in the chat if you want.
I definitely can do that. I mean, one of the probably scenario that I imagine is you give me something, if Ivan can use it, that's okay. But that's the bare minimum.
Aww.
The bare minimum. No, but I mean, Sebastiano knows I'm not that kind. Oh, come on. So, hola a todos.
El Ivano.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. Me llamo Ivan. Bienvenidos en Code with Italians. ¿Dónde está? So, yo tengo un perro negro. Se llama Spike.
You're buying time. I see the strategy here.
I'm stealing time. So, Spike, ¿cómo estás? ¿Dónde está el perro? El perro está... I don't know how he's on the couch.
En el sofá.
En el sofá, Super. So, gracias, Spike. So let's get back to business. We need to remove this shit from the rewards. I hate you.
No.
Anyway.
I'm not going to take it out. It's so good, dude.
You just reminded me, we once did an event for like a Spanish community outreach. So I'm from Spain and a bunch of our Devrel are as well. And we did this event in Spanish and it was the weirdest thing ever because we always speak English to each other. We were the composable lambda in the, like we couldn't find any of the words. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. Well, anyway, at some point we are going to do Japanese, Sebastian. I'm going to get back to you. Don't worry.
It's fine. So I don't like, the thing is that I've been studying Japanese longer than you've been studying Spanish, and my Japanese is worse than your Spanish, so there's that. But yeah, because Clara can speak Japanese, so there's that.
Yeah, I'm Italian, Sebastiano. I mean, that's Spanish is like this far from what I can speak already.
I didn't know this was a language channel. We could
it now is.
Into this.
It now is.
We can do. I mean, this is a learning channel, so we can do whatever we want. So if they ask you what language are you studying, Scala? No, I'm studying Spanish. So that's works for me. So what? Okay, so
I
I'm
think
also running the giveaway.
Yeah.
So if just to give you an idea, I'm reiterating on the chat. So if you type taco, you're gonna join the giveaway for the stickers. So go for it. Go for it.
summon?
It
Fair
might be a
enough.
double
Fair
dog
enough.
stream. Who knows?
Who knows?
Later,
Who
later. I'll go
knows?
get him.
Yes.
And so, what else? What else?
There was a question. There was a
just
question in the chat
yes.
before you showed off how good you're getting with your Spanish. Yep. Like,
Yeah, sure.
no, I'm not being ironic. You're improving every week, which is great.
I'm rehearsing. So
I mean, the audience wants you to rehearse as well. They're doing it for you.
yeah, fair enough. What's the question? Where's
Yeah,
the
there was a
question?
question a few minutes ago from Fabio, which was asking
Yeah.
if there was any news about Android TV.
Good question. Not at the moment. It is something on our radar. It's just we're trying to be smart about we're a small team and we're currently really partnering with Glance and Wear. We have a lot of involvement in those projects. We can't take too much at once. I do see a future where we do this, just not right now.
Sounds like you need to hire more people or something.
We need to hire more people.
Yeah, that's the fascinating part, because when from an Android developer point of view, when I think about Jetpack Compose or Compose UI or Compose in general, I imagine this, this is the future of Android. I imagine this massive team, like 1 million people working together. But then the more we actually dig into it, it feels like it's a very small team.
We're a
And
small
I
family.
wonder how can you manage? And I mean, would it scale? Would it be better with more people? I know that at some point there is at some point you have a communication problem because the more people you add, the shittier everything gets. But
to be fair, I'd say like the size of the Compose team now is already bigger than whatever project we've ever done in the past in this team. So we already struggle with communicating, I think, and making sure we know everything that's going on everywhere. I think one of the big problems with so yes, we have this grand vision of in a couple of years you write UI on Android, it should be Compose, right? Like, and that's a very clear long-term goal. The thing is right now we're setting a lot of precedents. It's going back to what I was saying earlier, if we're very thoughtful of what we put out there. We've been working with the Wear Compose project very, very closely because it's setting a precedent of a different, like a non-phone UI that is written on top of our stack. We have a lot of times of just arguments on API design. Should this use materials? Should it not use materials? Should the theme be the same? Should it not? Should a button be called a button? Should it be a wear button? We have a lot to discuss and to figure out what our guidance is. And then the next one will be easier, right? Like the day we do TV, we're like, okay, point at this. We already figured out a lot of the answers, but it's about scaling our team, right? Like first we need to work with one team, figure out what it is that we want to teach them and how we want that to have a shape. Then we suddenly grown the team by an entire team, right, of people. And I think that's how we scale further, but we have to encode a lot. The current Compose team has so much knowledge inside our own brains. Like we've been working on this for many years, but we've been doing a lot of work. And if you follow in the code base, Adam, who's the TL of Compose, he's been writing a bunch of API guidelines that are tucked into a markdown file inside our repo. And it's trying to encode that.
We have referenced that in the past.
And I think there's a lot that we know and that we can write down in a guideline. Like you take slots for content, and like that's a clear like thing we know works. It's something we bought into. There's a lot that we haven't kind of managed to formalize into a sentence yet that is kind of intuition of the team. The more we can do of that, again, the more we can scale because we can much easier teach people what to expect, what do we look at. It'll take some time.
Sounds like we might also want to get Adam to come and talk about the API design.
Yes.
But I remember that Chuck probably was mentioning something like that nowadays he's adding a bit more documentation than usual when he checks in code to to actually feed this long-term game of eventually people are going to start looking for documentation, and if I put it here right now, it's going to be there in the future. So that's also fascinating. So
if you follow, I think it was like a week or two ago, Chuck committed this big chunk of work we call movable content. I don't know if you chatted to him about that in particular. And he submitted the design doc with it, which is a great way of, I think a lot of what we do in API design, there's never a black and white right choice of things. It's a huge amount of trade-offs. And I think it's really important to document, like, there were 3 options and we went with this one because of this, because there was never a clear, oh no, of course we have to do it this way because the other way is wrong. And documenting that so that the next person who comes behind doesn't reopen. Like, we have a lot of reopen conversations where, like, wait, we've been here. Did we write down exactly why we move forward and what would it take to reconsider?
That is a very good approach. Although I think it might be a bit time consuming, especially with a relatively small team. But it's a great way to save pain and time in the future.
I think that's where also we're getting to that pivot point, right? Like, until now, I remember at the beginning, we started documenting the material components very heavily, and then they kept changing because we were iterating it. And then it was too much of a pain to keep that documentation alive. Even like DevRel were amazing because they've worked with us from day one, like way before we were alpha. The DevRel team were super involved, and they had to keep re-updating their samples. Every week we were breaking them. But I think now we're in a stable enough place that starting to do more of this pays off, right?
Speaking of releases, sorry, Ivan, I will...
Please.
Okay.
Don't worry.
So I was wondering, you were doing a release every other week until recently. You still are, right? Just is there... I don't even know what the current version of Compose is. I've updated it recently, but yeah.
We're in release candidate of our next release. We have every other week we put a release out, unless there's like a big holiday like Christmas, or we aim to release Compose, all of the Compose modules in every iteration of that. And then once we move from like alpha to beta to release candidate to stable. And right now we had to rehash another release candidate because there was one change that we had to submit to Compose that meant we kept our stable, but it is coming. And then in the meantime, we're already running alphas for the next release. So in parallel, you should be seeing release candidates and alphas going out.
Yeah, I was just opening the Compose release notes pages, but unfortunately or fortunately, our chat already had the answers because people are better informed than I am. Thank you very much, folks.
But there you go. I'm horrible at remembering numbers, but yes, we're in 1.1 release candidate. 1.1 should go stable very, very soon, unless we find another last minute fire that needs to be changed. And then we're shipping alphas of 1.2.
Nice.
What? Okay. So, asking for a friend. What's new in 1.2?
1.2 just started, right? Movable content is, I think, the biggest thing that has landed. There was a lot of work that went into 1.1. There's a lot of, and I think you'll see a theme moving forward. There's like 1 or 2 big features that will land in every release, but a lot of what we're focusing on is just the robustness of the system. Like, we want people to trust Compose. We want people to move to Compose. And so there's a lot of work that is not a shiny new feature, but it's actually, we've kept improving focus. And there's a ton of different CLs that went into 1.1 and 1.2 related to focus that are really hard to explain. It's just, the system is better, right? Like, we did improvements. We were working on deep pan navigation, and that ended up having a bunch of things in focus that needed to be fixed. We refactored how we do modifiers that depend on each other to better power these systems. But they're not end user features that are like an easy thing to put on a slide and say, here are the 5 things that went into 1.2.
Although I guess that will have positive impacts for non-Jetpack Compose as well, like desktop and web.
Yes.
So, yeah. But we'll talk about that later.
Well, the key is we've been driving towards the large screen, and then you'll see that everything kind of makes sense in relation to, there's a lot happening in keyboard navigation and focus. There's a lot happening in mouse support, trackpad support. The large screen layout stuff is happening. And even movable content, the thing that movable content allows us is to move different pieces within a screen, which helps when you're trying to resize an app from a small screen to a large screen. We will be placing content. It's all in kind of the same theme.
Nice.
Ivan,
I'm sorry, I sidetracked the conversation and you had a question.
I had a question about so it's all about the decision process that you have and the documentation that you need to pick the right granularity between I want to document everything and fuck me, everything is changing so quickly that I don't want to document anything anymore. But something that I used in the past that we are using also in the current project is ADR, to avoid architecture decision record. So something that helped a few teams that I worked with in the past to actually exactly what you mentioned, avoiding repeating the same discussion. Somebody joins the team and is it like today? Wow. Okay.
I thought it was today, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, we release on Wednesdays, so yes.
Yeah, we are lucky because we happen to be live when you folks release. So yeah, just for context. Ta-da!
Ta-da! 1.1 is stable. So
I swear we're not making it on purpose. We're not inviting key people for stuff that gets released.
No, but your live stream is on Wednesdays, which is our release day. Yes.
But that was a coincidence as well. It's not like we decided that it was gonna go for that reason on Wednesdays. It's like, oh, do Wednesday? Yeah, sure, fine, whatever.
Yeah, Wednesdays, okay. And I wondered if you have something like that. So ADR saved us so many times because somebody joins the team and then say, oh, why are we using coin instead of dagger? And you're like, oh, no, not again. So why are we using glide instead of Picasso? Damn it. So at some point you have this folder full of decisions and they can go there and then it's good for everybody. It's good for my liver and it's good for their time and it's I guess maybe not ADR, but you have something.
We have something super similar. We call them API decision docs, and we describe the problem in option 1, option 2, option 3, pros and cons, and people vote, and we document what happened. The problem is most of those are written by the team quickly and then in a maybe hard to make published publicly. Like we have this, we always come back to, oh, we should make more of our documents public, but sometimes the amount of effort in scrubbing is more than valid. So that's where we're trying to, for example, the document that Chuck submitted with movable content started, it's originally a Google Doc we had with that now he said, okay, now that it's settled, I think this is all shareable, I'm going to put it in the repository. So internally, we have a lot of those. I still think they don't capture the entire thing because they capture decisions between options. But sometimes we don't have anywhere written, how does the focus system work, right? Or how does the entire input system work? Like that kind of thing gets fragmented. Not everything is a decision. A lot of it is kind of the architecture and the original design doc doesn't reflect what is currently there because we've evolved since. And keeping those alive is really hard.
Yeah, that's something that I can relate because I had to write the how the subscription page works in my current project, and we have the production version, the debug version, and then they have the test accounts, and we have the local thing. And I was like, yeah, we are handing over the project. At some point, somebody's gonna knock to my door and say, Ivan, how this thing works. So better if I put something down.
Is that the moment where you're like, magic?
Yeah, it's like no, it's more it's the moment that I say, you know what, my contract ran over, ciao, but that's not professionally let's say it's inappropriate. So yeah, we have like a Notion page. It's like a wiki kind of thing, but I get the gist. So
we have
it's
effort
tricky.
We keep talking about like, oh, we should write more of this down. And it always comes back to, we have a lot of ideas of things we want to do that we just need time with DevRel. Like we always say, instead of writing this as an internal content, anything that we write that is a guide on how the focus system works should just be a public documentation. And then that adds a bit more of a barrier sometimes of, oh, then it doesn't happen because there's more pressure. But the more we can work on getting that public, the more the system kind of just runs with itself, right? We'll get there.
Compose wiki, like Wikipedia kind of thing. Just put it there and wait for people to try to help you, and then. But yeah.
I was skimming the announcement
Release notes.
blog post, not the release notes yet. And I was, it mentions the updated roadmap. Unfortunately, seems like it's not live yet because it's stuck in July. But I'm looking forward to seeing.
Give it 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. It has to propagate or something.
But yeah, our plan is we want to update the roadmap with every stable release. We figured it's not reasonable for us to be updating this every 2 weeks because it does require us chasing down everything that we're doing, and we've reconsidered maybe doing. But at least on every stable, we want to refresh this page and say, this is what we're working on. This is what we're probably working on next, with no promises because things change.
Do you have the highlights so we can have the timed exclusive? The roadmap.
I mean, I feel like we've been talking about it. I don't have the written list in front of me. You'll have to wait 10 minutes for that. But in general, you will see the focus is around making certain systems more robust. Again, continuing to work on improving underlying the input system, focus system, that sort of stuff. Animations, I think there's still a lot of really interesting work. Shared element transitions are being worked on. Movable content is kind of the thing that unlocks being able to animate content around, right? Like layout transitions depend on us being able to reposition hierarchies. So all of that is being worked on, plus large screens where I feel like we've touched on most of those things. You would not be surprised once the list refreshes.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I actually wanted to ask about something that we touched upon with Chuck that he was mentioning, and I've seen mentioned a couple of times in like online. One of the things that you're also working on, if I'm not mistaken, is performance, especially on low-end devices. Do you think, given we're talking about like non-phones, like I can think wearables would probably benefit from those. If eventually you get to TVs, that's also going to get a big benefit because those tend to be quite underpowered. So what is going on there? And is there anything specific for non-phones that you can think about?
Good question. Performance in general is a thread that we're never going to be done. We just keep working on. There's a bunch of projects in the pipeline, and it's just incrementally improving on. We are at a point where we're very comfortable where Compose is at on phones, right? And we know our performance right now, it's hard to compare apples to apples with the view system, but we are pretty in the same lines as the view system. It's just there's differences, and we have an extra step in measure layout composition as well, right? So it's hard to compare, but we are very confident that on phones, we're doing really well. There are interesting things. Did you talk with Chuck about like profile inception? Did you touch on that?
No, profiles? Not really.
So one thing that we found last year, Chuck and Leland can go into a lot more detail, but the key is the main difference we have between Views and Compose is Views was a thing that was built into the operating system. And so when you were running an app, all of the code for the toolkit was already compiled and in memory because it was part of the operating system. By moving Compose to a library, suddenly the UI toolkit is a library of code that is within your app. And the way Android works is when you first download an app, we don't immediately compile the app. We actually run in interpreted mode for a while, and the art, which is the runtime, tries to figure out what is the most optimized way of compiling your app, which it tends to do overnight. In the first night while you're sleeping, it actually then goes and compiles the app. So for a while, your app is running in what we call interpreted mode. And then we're seeing performance is obviously different when all of your UI toolkit is running in interpreted mode than when it is compiled code optimized and in memory. And for that, we did a project called Profile Inception, and Leland is kind of the expert here. But basically, we have a pact. We figured out a way of telling the runtime to actually precompile some of the bits that we know are going to be kind of in the critical path. So in reality, when a user gets your app and runs it in production, they're not going to notice, right? Like we fix the problem for you download an app from the Play Store, it will actually compile before opening, and all is fine. But we do see problems, for example, people trying to assess performance in a debug build or in a build that you just run from Studio into your emulator. Well, that's not going through the Play optimized profiles. And so suddenly your app is being interpreted. So we have some work that we've done there. We think we can take it further. There's still improvements in that space. And for example, Wear have just been working on this, like the concept of profiles, we implemented it on phones. And so now we need to go with Wear people and figure out how do we solve the same problem on Wear. Apart from that, like that is the biggest, when people tell us Compose is slow, the first thing I would say is, have you heard of profiles, right? Like that's the biggest, because it's the biggest contributor to why people are seeing, like they're working on an app and thinking that it's slow, right? If you put that aside, say you're compiled, say your code is running fine, we have a bunch of things, and then they tend to fall into kind of the compiler runtime space, right? Like there's more we could do to make faster access. I know Chuck worked on a bunch of just different data structures that store the tree. At one point, he changed the data structure that improves suddenly just the access to memory that we have, the amount of memory we're using. So there's a bunch of projects just in that space queued up that will benefit everyone. It will benefit phones, it will benefit tablets, it will benefit Wear, it will benefit anyone who's using the Compose compiler and runtime. And that will just keep doing over time. On top of that, we have been working, so the Wear team set up an amazing benchmarking system for Wear and have been looking at kind of what are there things that are specific to Wear that are making apps slower on Wear devices compared to phones. If you think of Wear, they tend to be very kind of low spec compared to a phone, very low spec devices, but also tiny screen with very simple UI hierarchies. And so that one we're pretty much in control of. We tried running Compose on a TV, and then the problem there is TVs are low spec, giant screen.
4K screens.
And I think that's where we'll have to figure out the day we want to tackle that. Is the improvements that we've done to the compiler and runtime enough to tackle that, or are there extra things we need to do? So yeah, long answer to performance is a big topic. It's a very, very, very big topic.
But I like the focus on, things that are slow on a hardware point of view. So we are trying to optimize as much as possible because we want to run everywhere. Because I remember, do you remember Ioanni and Alan? When we were talking about automotive. Huh?
Yeah, Al, not Alan.
Al, sorry. And they were talking about, they were running Android Automotive on an old Samsung tablet because the hardware in the cars is gonna be kind of old-ish, slow-ish when they hit the road. I like the fact that you are working to make Compose perform effectively on slow devices because they are gonna be way more than just your latest Samsung fancy S22. It's just gonna be a lot more places running Compose than your super performing smartphone. So I appreciate that.
And to be fair, it's a big focus in general for Android. If you think of it, we're very used to having the latest Samsung flagship, but a huge part of the market of Android is very low-end devices. And so we are aware of that, and we do try and do our best to kind of improve performance looking at that, right? Like we don't want suddenly half of the Android fleet not being able to run an app because it's running Compose. That would be a terrible thing for us.
Well, nice. I mean, we had some improvement as well when we switched to Kotlin, right? The whole coroutines stuff that saved us from threads and a lot of memory allocation and stuff. So I like the fact that we are working in so many areas, just trying to grasping for performance whenever we can do, because there's so many devices. I mean, we see it every day, right? I mean, with the iOS team, they're like, there was a story in last sprint, they deprecated iOS 13 because now we don't want to support old phones, and I was like, I mean, What do you mean? I mean, you have like 2 versions of iOS and you have like 3 phones. I mean, what do you mean? Oh, and then I look at the play console and we are supporting like 15 million devices. And they were like, oh man, I definitely need to rethink life choices, so that's very appreciated because there's so many devices.
Yep. And that's kind of, in terms of performance, that's important. Also, in terms of what we were talking earlier of layouts, like you can never anticipate what your app's going to look like in 15,000 different devices.
Yeah.
Hopefully
we
good.
had Mike in the chat the other day, and he's working on a phone that is like 3.2 inches. So the thing is like super tiny. It's super tiny. I mean, it's uncanny. But then it's running Android, right? Yeah,
and that's where
the thing.
If you remember at ADS, we talked a lot about window size classes. There's official documentation on this, but that is an effort we came up with to say, how do you even grasp the amount of devices and sizes? And so we came up with, if you do something for below this breakpoint, something for between this breakpoint and this breakpoint, and something for above, you've covered most devices, right? Like, and the idea was, how do we help you figure out that fragmentation and be able to figure out, like, does my app work on most devices? And to be fair, the 3.2-inch tiny device is not really what you want to target, right? But you want to target as much as we can of the devices out there. And that's why we came up with, like, what is the breakpoints that is the best percentage of phones possible, best percentage of kind of small tablets and foldable phones, what's the best percentage of tablets, to help you target that. And that goes side by side with, I don't know if you saw in Android Studio, we have reference devices now. And so when you used to have to run, say, emulator or even a preview with a specific device, like, oh, I'm trying this on a Pixel 5 XL. And instead now we have, well, here's a reference size for a phone, a foldable, a tablet, and a desktop. And it helps with just visualizing, like knowing what size you should be looking at. That hopefully covers as much possible. There's APIs in the works to bring this into API form. You'll see that coming in the next few months. And the idea being, we want to align all of our guidance to it as well. Like, if the material components say that you should be using a certain size of an app bar up to a certain breakpoint and a smaller one later, like, can we align those to compact, medium, expanded, so that then the entire UI shifts at the same breakpoints and it's not kind of all over the place.
Oh, well, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, screen size is always one of those conversations that usually break designers.
Yes.
Especially iOS designers. They're like, okay,
you mean mobile designers?
Yeah. They
synonymous.
This is your iPhone, and it's basically large as your desk. So now this is an Android phone, and this is large, is big as your American Express. So do your math. So, but this is definitely useful. But the same thing goes for tablet, right? I mean, they most of the time, unfortunately, as you mentioned before, tablet is completely another app. Because
and it doesn't have to be, right? And that's where we're trying to push. Like, can we come up with enough things that help you do an adaptive UI that you only really shift at these 3 breakpoints, well, 2 breakpoints, because 3 categories, and help you kind of reuse and make more adaptive choices in between them, so that you don't have to go and write a tablet because we know no one's going to go and write a tablet app separately from their phone app. Ideally, you have one that works.
True. Unfortunately, it's true. But we had a design episode where we were talking about layouts, and I can't remember the name. Javier was the name.
Javier Lopez.
And he was super knowledgeable, and we went through the various. He had a Figma board with stages of the same UI that was evolving over size, right? There was a phone, there is a foldable, there is. It was incredible.
Link this back to what I was saying earlier. Javier is the mastermind behind Canonical Layouts. And so that's the whole thing. Like, can you come up with a list detail only makes sense from median onwards, because otherwise you don't have space. So he was saying, like, okay, if you think of Gmail as a structure of a list detail, on below 480, it should be a single list. Once you grow beyond that, you should be splitting out into 2 panes. What do you do when you have even more space? Thinking of those as one journey of a typical app architecture, right?
Yeah.
It was very good. It was good because we were going from a phone to the like Chromebooks, and
Yeah, but
like this is how it looks like on a 12 inches, and I was like, wow, this is so good. If only. So I'm very very excited for that.
the great thing is, this is especially important, as Clara was mentioning earlier, when you're talking about Chromebooks that can run your application. And I mean, Windows soon as well. I don't know, maybe. I haven't tried it. I don't think they've released it yet, but the idea that you can run you can run your app on a desktop class machine, and then you can freely resize it. That means that you have to have breakpoints, and you have to take care of all the possibilities, because I mean, you don't know. Is the user going to full screen the app? Is the user going to give you like this small patch of screen just for you because they have other 15 things open? You don't know, but you have to care for that, and you need to think about what's going on. And this also gets me to a segue to a question that was asked by Hugo in the chat. Which is if there's anything performance wise specifically for Chromebooks.
Good question. Not that I know of. We've been working very closely with the Chrome OS team. Their engineers are behind some of the improvements we've done to hardware input for Compose. As far as I know, there's no specific performance questions. In general, when we talk about Chromebook use cases, as you said, like there's a lot of resizability of windows. There's a lot of issues with existing apps on just kind of the activity being recreated at every step of that resizing, which Compose solves, right? And in a way, I think Compose can do much better. We still have a lot of work to do in this space. We could provide a lot more API and help for these sort of things, but the mental model of Compose already fixes a lot of the issues that we were seeing before. But yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard of any performance issues with Chromebooks at all.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I can reasonably think of is, well, you have much more things on the screen, and your Chromebook doesn't necessarily have to be top tier performance wise. Maybe you have 1500 tabs open in Chrome. So I don't know. Maybe it might slow down. But
it's not something I've heard. I wouldn't say no, it's not true, but it's not something I've ever heard. A lot of what we talk about then is purely around input. Like most apps assume finger input, touch input. And so being able to move towards keyboards and mouse and trackpad is really the blocker there.
I was thinking which app I used recently on my Pixelbook that only worked if I use touch. For some reason, it didn't really work with even just using tab, which should work theoretically. It was done with views, so it should work, but with something wrong. Maybe they screwed up the focus order or something like that.
Or they did some custom, yeah.
Yeah. But this kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk about earlier, which is I am aware it's not something you're working directly upon because it's mostly my colleagues, but this segues into multi-platform. So you're working on Compose, and obviously it's Android first, but a lot of the problems you're solving are also problems that need to be sorted out for using Compose elsewhere, especially on desktop, but also on web and maybe iOS, I don't know, as well. So how is that working in terms of like, did you find any specific problems that my colleagues brought to you, or like, do you design these APIs with them, these changes?
There's a mix, I'd say. We do have an open collaboration with JetBrains, who are the sole responsible people for the desktop efforts. We do a lot of just collaboration. So sometimes they will put out proposals and we work together to figure out how do we embed this in Compose because it makes sense for everyone. Say mouse support, they originally came up with it, but really it benefits Chrome OS, and we really want Compose to support that. There's other things where we sometimes just don't have either the right priorities, aligned priorities. An example here for a while was scrolling bars. It was not on our radar because it was not something that touch input usually needs. It was not a priority for us out of the amount of work we have to do, and it was very important for them. And so they made progress on that on their own. So I think we just find a balance where we can. We really try to work together, but it is hard because there's competing priorities sometimes. And so some things end up being purely done in desktop that maybe later we say, oh, long term, we'd love for this to be upstreamed.
So you're kind of treating Compose multi-platform as a sort of a fork that does contribute back sometimes?
Not really a fork, more like a downstream project.
Right, yeah.
Right? Because they don't tend to modify the base Compose, so the common and Android bits. It's more of, are there things that are implemented purely on the desktop side, or are there things from there that need to be pulled into common because we think it benefits everyone?
Someone in the chat just joined asking if they missed anything on the TV support. You want to do a recap?
We mentioned this. We mentioned this earlier. Not yet. It's something we'd love to do, but we're not currently doing. Our big focus right now is Where and Glance. Just out of, I think they're great examples of Where is the first kind of other surface using the full stack of Compose. Glance is the first other surface using purely the runtime and compiler. And so we're setting precedents with them before we go and do more.
And also, as you said, solving problems within those categories will also solve problems that you then have to tackle for TVs as well. So, yep. Fingers crossed.
Time and resources, and we'll get to everything. Yes.
There was a question about...
Yeah, interesting question. Go for it.
Giuseppe was asking if there are updates on the performance for the list, because people are bitching about, Recycle View is faster, Compose is slow. I don't want to learn this. It's slow.
Some people just like to complain.
Yeah, I mean those people, right? I mean, because I don't know, but I'm not that kind of person, because I don't give a shit about, oh my God, this thing is fast, this is slow. No, it's useful and it's going to improve over time. So come on, you're not 5 years old. But for those interested in this kind of comparison...
It's a valid question, actually. We found a lot of reports from people saying that lists were not performant enough. We've done a lot of work in the last few months. We found that there were cases that we didn't anticipate where people were getting into kind of dark corners of things we didn't expect them to do. And so there's been a bunch of API work around, for example, forcing people to give keys on elements to avoid them being recreated. There's a couple of kind of things that are in progress there. There's also, I forget the speaker, there was a great talk on Compose performance that happened in November, December timeframe, where he was pulling through exactly this, the person who gave the talk had an app that had a list that wasn't scrolling smoothly, and then discovered they were doing 2 or 3 things wrong. It's an area we know, we've now discovered that the API is not guiding people enough, right? And that's one of the things that we keep collecting feedback. Within the API that we publish, people are getting into cases that we didn't expect. And so now we need to rethink and say, what do we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen? And there's going to be a combo of, we're working on kind of documentation around this and explaining what these cases are and why you get into that unperformant path and how to get out of there, and working on API and kind of making sure we try and close as many of the bad doors as we can.
It's kind of ties back to... Sorry.
Please.
Kind of ties back to what we were talking about with Chuck a couple of weeks back as well, which is that now this is also something that can be helped with tooling, especially things like tracing what is causing a recomposition, which might be the problem in a case like you have a list that is not performing. You might be recomposing the items all the time and not realizing it. So that sort of thing is I think is going to be a really great help, because it's good to have documentation, it's good to have pointers, but it's also you don't know that you need to learn to look at the documentation to a point. So kind of figuring it out, being pointed into the right direction.
I think we have a lot of ideas. We know it's a gap. We have a lot of ideas of how tooling could help in that space. And we're just not ready to put those tools out yet, right? Like there's a lot playing, Chuck is involved in a lot of this, of just how do we, the runtime does this amazing tree diffing and keeping in memory things, but how do we expose that in tooling in an efficient way that actually helps you understand what's going on? I think we're now at the point where we're stable enough that now we can start investing in these sorts of things.
Yeah, because you don't want to do that.
I always...
And well, the internals are changing every day.
Correct. Yes.
I always loved strict mode on Android, and it's one of those tools that is the thing that I add to every project that I join. Is it a greenfield project or it's been there for like 7 years? I'm the one that first PR is adding strict mode, and I just want Android to start yelling at us because we suck at programming. This is how I see strict mode. And I always loved also the debug, the developer option, when you actually have the red glowing box when you do. So that's the ultimate, shaming, peer pressure kind of thing. And I loved it because it moved me to improve a lot. It forced me to improve a lot. But that's because I'm probably more susceptible to that kind of pressure. But I like the idea that you hear back from people that are holding it wrong, and then you realize that they are holding it wrong because you somehow didn't think about that they could actually hold it wrong. Would you imagine like a series of very basic documentation page, like not like a code lab? Is more like, okay, this is how you do a list. These are the things that you need to take care of if you want performances. Because for me, Sebastiano just showed me lazy column when we started, and that was it, right? He showed me lazy column. You throw a list at it, bam, done. Oh, how do we add an header? Oh, you just add another. But then I never, and I started using it the way he showed it. And maybe I'm holding it wrong, right? Maybe I'm missing the key, the IDs in the elements, and the thing is low because I don't know the detail. Would it be imaginable to have, this kind of support?
We're working on that. So yes, we are working on that kind of documentation. The other one is, a lot of it goes back to API design and why we take so much care in what we do. We do a lot of UX research when we put things out there to make sure, like, we would love for you to start typing and the thing you type is the right thing, right? Like, that's our goal. That's why we go through so much pain sometimes and very slow progress on things, because we rewind, we try again to try and guide you to the right thing. And to be fair, the base code that for lazy column is correct. It is what we want you to write. It just turns out, and I believe the case that I know about that was actually non-performant is when you have different kinds of cells and you keep alternating between them. If you don't tell, because the system's trying to recycle, we do the same as recycle view when recycling actual compositions, and if you weren't telling the system that there were two kinds of cells, like every time it was disposing of the composition because it saw it was not the same. And so it's the advanced mode that breaks, right? Like we did enough research to get the base case right, but we didn't dig enough to get that. And so that now we need to work on that more advanced case to make sure the API is there to guide you to do the right thing.
But unfortunately, I have to say that that's not advanced at all, because
you made it too easy.
It's beyond what we tested in our test case, which tells us we posed the question wrong, right?
Because that, when I had the Android course last year, one lesson was recycle views. Okay, so this is how we got the JSON, and now we show it in a list. We build the recycle view, and everybody was like, okay, the adapter, the view holder, okay, this makes sense. And then you want to add an header, you want to add two types of elements, and or you want the whole screen to scroll, right? That was the basic. There was a title, and there was the list that was scrolling. So after 2 hours, after I started teaching recycle view, we were already doing multi-type recycle view. So basically, the single type recycle view, it never exists, right? For me, it's never existing because iOS people, the screen just scrolls, right? So every designer is gonna tell you, oh yeah, the title scrolls with the list, and that's a multi-type list. There is no way around. So the basic type, the basic recycle view, it really never existed for me. But I understand that you need to build small blocks and then build on that. But again,
we're working on
continue.
it. We continue.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
We have someone who purely works on lazy lists because this is such a big item. But yeah, we'll continue. There's a lot. That's the thing I said, and that's why we don't have a lot of flashy features in every release. There's still a lot of work to do in Compose. We're very confident it's production ready now, but there's still a lot more we could do and we need to do. And it's a matter of time and keep plugging those holes as we hear them and try and we're now doing a big effort of understanding what is it that is keeping people from adopting Compose? What are the things that we should be prioritizing? Because you need to put an order to that list. We're replacing a system that took 10 years to build. And so it's going to take a while to rebuild, right?
You also need to keep something for Compose 2 otherwise.
Well, Compose 2 is just Compose for iOS, and that's it. Ciao. The whole release is going to be the nail on Flutter coffin. Tink. That's it.
No comment.
Yeah. No, hashtag no comment. Yeah. I'm doing this for the lols, so don't ignore me. So what else, Sebastiano?
I had a question that I wanted to ask, but I'm afraid I might have forgotten it in the meantime.
Sorry.
I'm gonna try and think about it, but in the meantime, I don't know, Clara, is there anything I'm gonna do the chat move? Is there any question that we should have asked but we forgot to ask?
Oh, nice.
Sneaky.
Hey, that's it's fine. If ADB can do that, we can do that as well.
I've sat in enough chat podcasts. I mean, we've covered a lot of it, I think. Oh, we have a visitor. See, there you go. That's what you forgot to ask. Taka. And he ran away. He heard you were here.
Oh, come on.
I'm gonna show him Spike. I'm gonna show him Spike.
Taco, there's a friend. Come for the friend.
There's another dog.
To be fair, there's a question around experimental APIs and opt-in APIs that I can go for while he decides to come see me. Taco, come here. Ah, there you go. Come here.
Taco!
Oh, look at that. Ciao.
Oh.
And he's out.
Hello.
Sorry, experimental APIs and opt-in APIs.
Brief visit.
Brief visit. Yeah, in that sense, and I saw several questions that came earlier. We're using experimental and opt-in as a way of, so we have a very strict policy on API compatibility, right? We've inherited this from Android. Once we have an API out there, we're going to maintain it forever. And so it means that whenever we cut a beta release, and a beta is when we lock our APIs, anything that is present, and we allow tiny changes during a beta of a release out of feedback, like if developers tell us, no, really, this API doesn't work. But really at that stage, it's frozen. And once it goes out in a release, we can't touch it. Semantic versioning tells us we can't modify it. We can't add a parameter. We can't remove it. And so what we are using experimental and opt-in for is being able to iterate on things longer than one release. Being able to say, well, this shared element transition stuff, I'm trying it. I want feedback and I want to put it in the hands of developers, but I'm not guaranteeing that this exact shape of this API is going to last the next 10 years. And it's a way we're having of being able to iterate and really talk to the community about things before we remove that annotation and then it becomes engraved in stone forever. And so...
But I love it. I mean, I think it's great.
It's interesting because it bypasses semantic versioning, right? So when you're using a library, that library cannot be using experimental APIs. Otherwise, just out of the way how Gradle resolves your dependencies, you will have a breakage in your app because that API may not exist, right? Like it may exist in Alpha 1 and then not exist in Alpha 3. You pull in Alpha 1, your library pulls in Alpha 3, you're going to break just out of how reference resolution happens. So it's a very useful tool. It's very dangerous across dependencies. And for example, we've had to ban the usage of it across module groups within Compose, just out of otherwise we're going to create problems for the developer. But it is a very powerful tool, and kind of we're really excited about how it unlocks us being able to try features and take our time with features without having to keep branching things out.
But that's the part that I like, right? The fact that you don't put constraints or like, self-imposed deadlines, like we need to ship it into the weeks, otherwise no, and it's like, okay, just to chill, put an annotation there. I want to see if this thing works. I want people using it, and we reassess in 1 month. Just get off my shoulders. we want to do it properly. So I love it.
I think there's a very ingrained culture in the team of like every API over the last 10 years that we've rushed to ship, we've regretted later and had to deal with the pain of maintaining. And so yeah, we're very careful.
But the thing is, and I think this is something that kind of gets lost sometime, it is not that because something is in an alpha or because something is marked as experimental APIs that it shouldn't be used in production. It means that the API might change. So you can use it in production. It will probably work just fine. If it doesn't, this is just there to tell you, hey, let us know this doesn't work so we can fix it before we ship it in stable.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's more like API changeability or than stability. Yeah, it's more like that. That's how I see it, right?
It marks that API is not stable, that we aren't ready to make it stable.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that it's not production ready, the code underneath it.
Yeah, that
it could mean both.
It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah.
But there are also two levels of caring about the product, because the implementation inside, I assume there are like a shit tons of tests. The API is inevitably a bit opinionated, and it's more like a guesswork at the beginning, and then we need to iterate. So there are two completely phase of the coin, how it is, side of the coin. So something is like Roman was saying something like that, right? The API is something that once you put it out there, that's it. That's it. But while the implementation is something that you can still work on it. So I like the idea that their stability is not connected with the name of the library or the version of the library. You always work to stability and also polish the API as feedback comes in. So that's good.
Yeah.
There was also a question about how to give feedback on experimental APIs. What will be the place to point
you will
out?
Find experimental APIs are part of a release, so you find them just like you find any other API. It's just when you try and use it, it will warn, like Studio will tell you, you have to add this opt-in annotation to use it. So for finding them, they're just part of our API surface. For feedback, the best thing you can do is either use the issue tracker, which we use for filing bugs on the team, or if you have more of a question that is harder to pose as a statement, the Kotlin land Slack is a really good place. We're very active. Many people on the team are active in the Kotlin Lang Compose channel. And so that's a great way of reaching when you're not sure what the suggestion you're trying to pose is. That's a great place, I think, to iterate and get that conversation going.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Are you finding the link to that even? Otherwise, I'll do that.
Yes. Yes. I'm
okay.
Right.
Okay, great. Yes. So I think maybe last thing that I wanted to say on the topic of stability, if you're using coroutines, you're probably using a lot of experimental APIs, just the same as you do when you're using Compose. I think it seems to me from the outside of both teams that the logic is the same, where we are trying to, like, we put this one out there. We want to see how people use it. We want to see how it doesn't work for them, or if it works for them, then fine, it's going to ship in the next release. So if your app uses Kotlin, which is a prerequisite for using Compose, and if your app uses coroutines, which are also used by Compose, so really no reason not to use them, you're already dealing with experimental APIs in a lot of cases, and there are things in the coroutines API that you cannot do unless you use experimental APIs. So I guess it's very similar. Nice. Perfect timing, Ivan. Very good.
Teamwork. It's a small team, but we work hard.
Yeah, we need to hire someone. No, wait.
No, we don't.
I mean, maybe we could hire Taco to come
dogs.
on the stream every now and then.
More dogs.
Yeah, more dogs.
I agree for more dogs. Yeah, more
In
dogs
some bizarre way, you've managed to get most of our team to show up to your stream
Yeah.
as volunteers.
Some bizarre way. I asked everyone.
Well,
But it's not my fault
Yeah,
if you all do crazy, interesting things, and I want to talk about that.
at some point, I'm gonna get some harassment suit leather or something, because because stop some project manager or like engineering manager, right, writing like, stop getting my people on your stream.
Either Clara or
appreciate-
Anna Chiara, I guess. Either of them.
Yeah. I don't want to mess with them. I mean, I know both of them. I really don't want to mess with them.
We appreciate this. I mean, we get to chat about what we do. We love working with the community. I think the baseline of Compose has always been work with developers, not we go into our high tower and come up with something. And so we appreciate the forum, right? Like being able to have this conversation.
Yeah,
Nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice.
yeah, to me, it's also an opportunity to ask things that maybe, you don't put in the documentation because maybe it doesn't really make sense, but I'm curious about it, and I can ask about those things in a more informal setting, let's say, where we can also swear, coincidentally.
Yeah.
Well,
or you can actually almost pass out when Chuck starts explaining how the snapshotting shit works, and he almost broke me. I mean,
I don't know if you've seen it, Clara, but that was...
I haven't yet,
Yeah.
no.
No.
He does
I mean,
serious business.
No, man, I was like, this is wow. Okay, ciao. I'm Ivan. I do recycle views, and then there is this guy writing the no, because now I'm working on the movable content thing, so you can move things around while they are animating. What are you talking about? I was like, who does that? How do you do that?
Chuck does, and
like,
he's really good at it. Mm-hmm.
No, man, that's not. No. I don't. Whatever. Yeah. Scarred for life. I mean, the fucking episode traumatized me. It traumatized me. Anyway.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the clip. I'm gonna put. I really want to get the clip of even brain
That's
melt.
not good. No, I was like, no, this is not. But because I mean, we started with Leland. He already is like, okay, yeah. He was explaining a lot of stuff over the time, and then he goes like, you should really have Chuck on the stream. He's the real deal. Okay. And he was like, oh yeah, when I invented Delphi, when I was working in Borland, I was like, what? Yeah, Windows Form, whatever. When I was in Microsoft, what? Sebastian, I was like, what's going on here? I went full Travolta at some point. Who's this guy? And then I was like, yeah, it was a nice episode. If you want to give, Chuck, I love you, but the thing was intense.
But it's good that he started with the premise of you don't have to know any of this. That's the good part about it.
And I think we have a bunch. Leland has given a bunch of talks around all of this. Yeah, it's all content you don't need to know, but many people ask us about it but I really want to know. Super interesting stuff.
I love that people in the chat put in the quotes. They remember what Ivan said.
No. I mean, you The thing was brutal.
Ooh.
I got like probably 5% of the whole episode. And he's super knowledgeable. He will probably spend the whole year explaining stuff because I don't get it. But for those 2 hours, I was like, okay, this is another level of the same industry that I work in, right? I can do this, and he does that. Okay, that's fair. You know, you need every kind of level of engineers. So, but I am very happy that I don't need to know how that stuff works, because it just works, and I like the API. You know, we are back to the API thing. I don't need to know the implementation. I just need to like or give feedback on the API, and that's it. That's where I stand.
We're just very happy that someone does the hard job for us.
It was good. It was a great episode. It was a good episode.
Ivan, I think it's time to wrap up. Time to give away some stuff.
Yes.
Let's while you do that,
the stickers.
While you do that, I just want to say thank you, Clara, for being with us, and for allowing your team to take some time off to come and join us every now and then. I think this also answers the question that someone asked in the chat earlier. Is like, I want the names of the people that work in Compose, but just you've seen most of them at this point.
or you've seen the ones who would happily come on a stream. I think.
Most of the ones that would be happy to. But we have still some. I mean, Adam needs to come.
A lot of them look at who's active on Kotlin Lang.
Yeah.
Twitter. Yeah. A few on Twitter.
Maybe Jim. I don't know. We will have Matvey soon as well.
Nice.
So yes, I'm very, very looking forward to that. So yeah, someone else from your team.
Eventually you'll be able to build the graph. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, close enough at this point.
Nice. It's like the organigram. How is it in English? Organigramma of the company. So we have a winner for the stickers. Congratulations. Hi, Mom.
Matt. Hey, congrats, Matt.
And let me also look for some winner on for the IntelliJ license. I'm just getting
Is it today?
there in a No?
No, we do that on Sundays.
Postpone it?
We do it on Sundays.
Okay. Yeah. That's it. Congratulations for the stickers. That's it. Oh, but I noticed. Yeah, I noticed that they are also supporters. So you get both the stickers. You get the Angry Pizza one, and you can even buy this on the store. The one that you cannot buy is the Hollow one. And thank you for being a supporter. And what else, Sebastian? Oh well, you also will get some other sticker. Don't think that I'm not sending you also the IntelliJ stickers.
I need to fill up on those. Ask for some more.
You know what? We should really look for some Compose stickers. If only we knew somebody that could give us Compose stickers.
We haven't made them since we had like in-person conferences. Like we had a giant stash the last ADS that happened in person. Yeah, we should make new ones.
I mean, if
we ship worldwide. We ship worldwide for free to our subscribers because we use the money of the subscription to buy stickers and stamps. So we are also like a service for the community. So.
Okay, I want to say thank you to Clara again. Thank you to everyone that joined us today. It was great as usual. Like. I know I say it all the time, but I'm always so happy when I do these streams because I learn so many things and I talk about so many interesting things with interesting people, which is great. We are going to be doing in a couple of minutes. If you are a subscriber, we're going to be putting a link on our Discord to join the thumbnail creation process, which is going to last like 15 minutes or so, which is the backstage pretty much. So you still have maybe a minute or two to become a subscriber and join the Discord. You can find the Discord at cwti.link/Discord and see you there or see you on Sunday. Have a great one.
Ciao.
Bye.